What is up, and welcome to the 49ers Camelot Show. I'm excited to have you, excited to be here, and I'm real excited to have Jonnydel of Jonnydel's Football Academy. This is going to be fun, man, because this guy knows his stuff. I've seen him break down film, watch his stuff whenever I can, and he does great work. Johnny, thanks so much for joining us.
Well, thank you, Mark, so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. It's a joy to come on, and it's fun to have this interaction because you've written and done so many things for the Web Zone over the years, and I got my start in the forums of the Web Zone. So,
Oh yeah.
there's a good connection there, and that's been a good place for a lot of 49ers talk and content over the years.
Yeah, a lot of content creators came from, or got their start at 49ers Web Zone in one way or another. I had one of my first guests was Oscar Aparicio, and so back in the day, I remember him being in those forums as a moderator, and those were fun times. And then I've had a couple of people that were from Niners Nation, and they told me, "Hey, we got our start there," and so it's been pretty cool to see how this content creation universe for the 49ers has evolved, because everybody seems to be so supportive of each other, and I think that that's really cool.
Absolutely. I mean, I love the 49ers content creator uh, world and kind of orbit of people who have really, we all, I think a lot of us came from the perspective of we're not trying to do this just to cover the NFL or cover something just to do it, but it's birthed out of a true passion for the team. And that's what I love hearing from is people who have a true passion for the team because it pushes you to go deeper, it pushes you to know more, pushes you to want something from the team, and it just makes you more passionate about your content
Yeah.
overall.
Yeah, that's it's a lot of fun, and I really appreciate the opportunity to talk with different people and get different perspectives, and so I like meeting with people like you because I'm not the film guy. So I played in high school, I coached when I became an adult, so I know the game, but I just don't take the time to study film and break it down, and so I rely on people like you and John Chapman and Oscar back in the day when they had the Better Rivals podcast, because I think that you guys are the stars, because you really cut this up and and help the rest of us kind of understand what's going on. And so, how much time do you spend doing that?
Oh boy, that's a good question. So for anybody who's seen my weekly review videos, that's usually anywhere from a 12 to 16 hour process.
Wow.
That's going to be so. Just as a the ins and outs of it. The film itself, so if we look at the Giants game, for example, the 49ers offensive film, just the offensive film was an hour and 9 minutes. That's if you hit play and run it to the end. And that's not broadcast angles. That's you're going to get an all 22 both end zone views. So you're watching each play 3 times from different angles, and this is sped up a lot faster than the broadcast view. You're getting about 5 seconds, 6 seconds before the snap. It depends on how much movement goes on in
Sure.
between there. But so just to watch the offensive side's a minute or an hour nine. Defensive side, it was very apparent how much the 49ers controlled the ball in that game because the defensive film was like 38 minutes long.
Right.
So in the end, it's almost 2 hours just to watch it straight through. That's not stopping and rewinding. And because I wasn't the one calling the plays, you don't know exactly what play was called before you see it. And so you kind of got to watch it a few times to see what exactly was the play that was called, especially passing plays to see, okay, you're looking at this side and then you're looking at that side. And then you go back and look for coverage clues and figure that out. So just to watch through the film takes anywhere from 4 to 5 hours, and then there
Holy
comes the
cow.
script writing process. And I'm doing that like, and as I'm going back and forth and watching some things, and then trying to take a break every once in a while because it's pretty hard on the eyes to watch for 4 or 5 hours straight. Usually it's me and a big cup of like 3 cups of coffee, and then go through and script it out, pick what plays I'm going to show because it takes so much time to edit them out that I don't want to I don't want to overwhelm myself and make it to where I can't really put something out that either dips the quality or makes it overwhelming. I try and pick between 22 and 25 plays, and so it becomes okay. What is the story of the game? That's really what I look through when I'm watching that film through the first time. What's the story of the game, and then how do I tell that from the film? And so I select plays that tell the story of the game, of the crucial points in the game, and then write the script out, record the audio, then edit it all out. So the whole process, I mean, sometimes it can be as short as 12 hours. Sometimes it's been 16, 17, 18 hours.
Wow.
When I've done preview videos of our opponents, because that usually involves watching 3 games and cutting some of that stuff up and then going back and finding plays to show as examples of how we do stuff. Those videos, I usually reserve those for the playoffs because they take me 20 to 24 hours of straight work. So it's usually 2 straight 12-hour days of work. People have always asked me, "What? You should do preview videos of our opponents and scouting videos," and that's why I don't do them because
Yeah.
I do have a full-time job outside away from this.
Holy cow.
Yeah, during playoffs becomes very, very busy.
Man, well, that's why I think that those of you that do that stuff are the true stars of the content creation world because of your commitment. Randy Daytona's in the chat and he's telling us what's up. So thanks for joining us, Randy. So let's jump into this. I wanted to ask you, what have you seen since you've been breaking down film? What have you seen from the 49ers so far that makes you think that this team has a real chance to win the Super Bowl?
I think it's just the sheer breadth of talent. I was almost about to say depth of talent. That's one of the only things that you worry about with this team is, they have so much talent across the board at the starting roles that when you lose one of those guys, anybody's going to be a big impact. But the breadth of talent on this team is just astounding. And that's part of what you can have when you have your starting quarterback making less than $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
But you look at the talent on the offensive side of the ball with Trent Williams and George Kittle and Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, Kyle Juszczyk, that's a lot of talent on that side of the ball. And then you look at the defense, and the defense is, you could almost make an argument, is loaded up with even more talent than the offensive side of the ball when you're looking at Fred Warner, Drake Greenlaw, Hufanga, Charvarius Ward, Nick Bosa, Hargrave, Armstead. I mean, this is a veritable just monster lineup that they're coming out with. And so you have stars at every single level and every single position group, guys that are near the top of the NFL. I think maybe the Eagles could say that. But even then, I think the Eagles have taken a step back this year. Other than that, is there a team in the NFL that you can look at and say that every single position group has a star at that level? I don't think so. And so when you see San Francisco, I mean, that the talent is just overwhelming to say that they have to be one of the top 4 teams as far as odds to win the Super Bowl this year.
Yeah, that's good stuff. So I've got a couple of guys here in the chat. Jason is here. Jason Massey. Let's see. The Centennial is in, and he asked a question. Let me see if I can find that. Is that a painting of the $1 million backfield?
No, it's not. That's Joe Montana at number 16, and then number 38. I'm trying to remember who number 38 was.
Is that Bill Ring? Is that who that was?
Yeah. That was actually a painting given to me by a Seahawks fan. Surprisingly, back out in Washington.
Well, what would they need with the 49ers?
Well, I guess it was their parents, like it was their dads, that they had been a 49ers fan. They had the painting. They were a Seahawks fan, didn't want it. They knew I was a huge 49ers fan, and so it was a fantastic gift.
Yeah, so if you're listening to this and you're only listening on the audio version of it, Johnny has a painting of Joe Montana handing the ball off to Bill Ring. This had to have been like 81, somewhere around there, because Bill Ring wasn't on the team for too many years, but that's pretty cool. So Josh is in the chat. He said, "What's up, fellas?" What's up, Josh? Good to have you. Centennial said that the face mask threw him off. So, yeah, old school. All right, so let me ask you this. So you just made the case of why the 49ers could definitely win the Super Bowl. Is there anything you've seen that makes you concerned so far?
Not really as far as a glaring thing. The only concerns I guess I would really have is can we cover the slot and man coverage with Isaiah Oliver, and or what's this rotation going to look like if they put Ambry Thomas back on the outside and Lenore in the slot? Figuring out that sort of 12th position on defense is the question mark right now. It's something that we saw during preseason. We thought was going to be Isaiah Oliver. He struggled in preseason. Then it became a question mark, and it still kind of is. And we're playing a lot more man coverage than we have in the past couple of years with D'Amico Ryans, a lot more man coverage. And so that's a question to me. I don't know if it's a full concern, but it does make you worried going against the better teams in the league that have a few more weapons across the board, how you match up against that. Then the other side would be just health. I think that's what the thing that we've looked at this team for many years now, going back to 2020, and always felt like health is the one thing that gets us every year. Is that 2021 they went into the NFC Championship game against the Rams so banged up, so many guys either out or walking wounded, just trying to tough it out, but clearly not playing at the level they normally would. And then obviously last year, with Brock Purdy tearing his UCL in the NFC Championship game, and last year we had so many injuries at the front of the year. So the question is this going to be the season? I think many of us hold our breath a little bit coming out of these games going, okay, is there going to be somebody that pops up on the injury report as is going to be missing? They're going to go on short-term IR or, something like that. So for me, maybe it's just the paranoia of the last few seasons, but it's what are the injury concerns going to be going forward? It's week 3 and we're doing well. So we feel good about that.
Yeah, and I mean, this time every other year we weren't doing well at this point, so injury wise. So yeah, definitely a good start. So let me ask you this: before I jump into Javon Kinlaw, because I want to ask you about him. You mentioned Isaiah Oliver. Do you think that he's a better matchup against bigger receivers and maybe not the guy that we want in there when it's a smaller guy, like if Cooper Kupp was playing later in the season? How do you see him? Is he better versus one versus the other?
He definitely struggles a little bit versus the smaller, shiftier guys. He's a physical corner or physical defensive back, and that's what you see. It's how they want to use him. That was one thing that was has become clear watching the film that they liked from him, is that he's very physical. And one thing about the 49ers from that nickel position, some people call it a star position, but it's a position that they're going to have to get involved in the run game, and they're going to be put in space to tackle. And we've seen him make some really good tackles in space and get physical there. Against the Rams, I remember, he had a big stop short of the first down on a pass on into the flat, and he had that big stop on 4th down. Against the Giants, they hit a swing, a little quick out towards the sideline. It was like 3rd and 2, and he stopped it for, I think it was a loss of a yard, and forced 4th down. Those sorts of plays are why he's there. Now, he's not the quickest feet guy, so he can struggle with that. But one thing that was interesting to notice, that how Wilkes went into the Giants game that was different from when they were game planning with Ambry Thomas to start the game, was that Charvarius Ward was traveling. He hasn't done that a lot in the past. So Charvarius Ward wasn't, there was one play or several plays where the Giants would put somebody over. They would have 2 receivers to one side, and they would have 1 receiver to the other, and Isaiah Oliver was to the single receiver side, and Charvarius Ward was playing the receiver in the slot. And so he's traveling with their best receiver. So if it comes to a situation like Cooper Kupp and he's in the slot, I see Wilkes actually moving Ward around and keeping him on Charvarius Ward or Lenore. Whoever he thinks is going to handle that two-way space better, is that somebody's going to be going with another team's star receiver if they're trying to match up on Isaiah Oliver in the slot.
You mentioned Ambry Thomas. What do you think about him? Because I'll tell you that I have been pretty vocal that I get nervous when he's in the game. And I go back to that 2021 season, the finale, when he picked off that pass to put the 49ers in the playoffs. I've not gone back and I haven't watched the all 22 or anything like that, but I swear when I've seen that over and over again, it looked like Odell Beckham Jr. had beat him. And if the quarterback didn't underthrow him, maybe that game ends differently. Now, again, I haven't gone back and like looked at different angles, but that ever since then, I just haven't really believed that he's the guy. What do you think about Ambry Thomas? Is he good enough to be out there?
Ambry Thomas has the physical tools. He's got good length. He's got a lot of speed. He's got good feet. Ambry Thomas's biggest problem has been not playing his technique really well, not nailing down on the coverage particulars really well. So that play in particular, yeah, he was out of phase. So Odell had a few steps on him. Now, what he did do well on that play was that he squeezed him along the sideline and he made this throw a really tight window throw. So, in that sense, it was okay. In the other sense, if Stafford makes a better throw there, yeah, that's probably a completion to Beckham, and like you said, that game ends a little bit differently. It was after the second game, Ambry Thomas came out after halftime. Or excuse me, it was after the first game. The first game we had against the Steelers, Ambry Thomas comes out after halftime. And I had the back and forth with some people on Twitter because I watched the film and I saw what happened in that first half. And I tweeted, I said, the only negative out of this game was that Ambry Thomas ended up getting pulled because of some poor play. At halftime, people said, no, he was in a concussion protocol. He was injured. It wasn't performance related. I said, I don't think so. From what I saw, because he came back in later in the game. I saw him on special teams, and he was actually in the game on Hufunga's interception. And Kyle Shanahan was asked about that in his presser, and he said, I can't really tell you the particulars of that, but maybe if you watch the film, you might be able to figure it out.
Yeah.
And, good luck if you want to do that. Well, I had watched the film, and I saw what was going on. We were running, it was right before the 2-minute drill. We were running a coverage called Palms coverage a lot, or some people call it read 2. It's cover 4, but the defense reads the release of the number 2 receiver, and if he runs an out route 5 yards or less, sometimes they'll move it to 6 yards, then it converts to cover 2 on that side. And so the outside guy, Ambry Thomas, he's supposed to read the release of the number 2, and if that guy runs a quick out, jump that route, because the deeper route's going to go to the safety, and he's got to play aggressively to the sideline, especially in 2-minute drill. Well, they ran that coverage 3 times in a row, and twice out of that, the Steelers went after him with a quick out from the number 2, and he didn't convert to cloud, or he didn't convert to the flat coverage, and it gave up like a 7-8 yard completion and let them get out of bounds. That's one thing you cannot do in a 2-minute drill.
Yeah.
And at the very start of the 2-minute drill, he gave up a quick pass to the flat. I think we were in cover 3, and he went for the guy's legs. And what you have to do in that situation, you have to tackle high, because if you tackle high, you'll force somebody back, and that's a forward progress stoppage. It's not, so if you hit the guy high and you move him backwards and he goes out of bounds, that's forward progress, not out of bounds. So the clock continues to run. He went after the guy's legs. That's a mental mishap, and the guy hurtled over him and went out of bounds. So those are lapses that you can't have in those moments, because that's what allowed the game to get even within striking distance for the Steelers, because they were able to move down and score a touchdown.
Yep.
And then there was another play, I think it was cover 3. They ran a deep comeback on him, and he kept like a 6-yard cushion the whole way, and the guy get a little comeback, was able to gain and then move forward and go out of bounds. It's another one of those situations, again, if you're playing a little bit tighter and you touch the guy while he's moving backwards, that's a forward progress play. The clock continues to go. So it was just particulars of the situation of the game that really didn't like. There was another play, started out early. They ran a sweep outside, and Cleveland Farrell disrupted the play. Everybody kind of made a gang tackle. The only guy that was in the area that didn't get involved in that tackle was Ambry Thomas. He wasn't real physical there. He just kind of olayed him and then just kind of stood there and watched 5 guys tackle him. And it's one of those, I want Ambry Thomas to do well, but when you see that kind of stuff on film, it's very, very frustrating, because the physical tools are there. It's just the light bulb hasn't seemed to gone off.
Yeah.
And so, that's how I kind of feel about Ambry Thomas.
Wow, great stuff. Well, let's talk about Javon Kinlaw because I'm wondering, has he finally turned the corner? Because he's looked good so far. He's no longer the guy in the middle that has all this pressure. He has, first round pick, has to replace DeForest Buckner, which was really unfair because Buckner's so good. But now with Javon Hargrave there and Kinlaw's just a rotational piece, it seems like, for one thing, he's healthy finally. And for another thing, it seems like that pressure being lifted off of him has really helped him. He's not facing as many double teams. How do you see Kinlaw? Has he turned a corner here?
I feel like this is a situation that Kinlaw really could have benefited from his first year or his second year, in the sense that and I know that wasn't an option. He part of how we got him was, and why they were willing to get him was the trade away of DeForest Buckner. So it wasn't really the option. But what you see is that they've simplified his tasks so much, and they've let him it's almost like letting a guy, who's just pure chaos, just pointing that chaos at something constructive now. And so what he's because he's only playing about 25-30% of the snaps now, instead of 70% of the snaps. He's not being asked to do a big variety of things. When he's there, his job is very simple. They're not asking him to be involved in a lot of possible slants, against possible run plays where he's having to read a lot. They'll line him up if they think it's going to be a rundown when he's there on rotational. It's very much, you're here at the 3 technique, dominate the guard, keep your gap. That's all it is, and then a lot of times they're bringing him in passing situations where it's, again, dominate the guy in front of you. And that allows him to let loose the physical, just raw ability that he has.
Yeah.
And just he is a physically extremely impressive defensive lineman. His problems have been understanding how he fits within the entire scheme of the defense, of playing a multitude of roles in that defense, and techniques and pad level things like that. But it's just like, if he is just allowed to kind of attack in one thing, you've seen the results. And I think this is now great. Okay, get him this year of doing this. See if you can bring back on a cheap contract next year, and let's keep him there, because I think you're seeing the potential of what he could be going forward.
Yeah, that's been it's been impressive, and you make a great point that he's not having to think as much. And when you're a young player and you've missed so much time due to injuries like he has, it's gonna take longer for you to develop because you're not getting the chance to play and to develop. Centennial said, personally, we need a replacement for the skill level that Jason Verrett brought to the team in 2020. If Patrick Surtain can be 70 or 80% of what Jason was in 2020, that would be great. That is one, man, losing Verrett, boy, that hurt. Not just for the team selfishly, but for him, on a personal level. That was hard to lose a guy like that.
Yeah, Verrett was a top tier talent. I remember when we signed him, the very first time, I went back and I watched all of his film from the Chargers. I was like, I didn't know much about him because he'd been a guy who was injured so much, and there wasn't a lot of, he wasn't a household name. But watching his film, I was so impressed, impressed. It was just like one of those, you came out of the game going, man, each game you watch, this guy is solid. I remember it was right early in the early days of my channel, and I did a video on him, and I think I put it on the 49ers subreddit, and a bunch of people were coming at me going, yeah, this is from 2 years ago. This guy's not going to be any good. He's been hurt and all this stuff. And then to see him battle through those injuries, and then in 2020 when he got on the field, he was exactly what I thought he would be from his film before. And then just the injuries piling up on injuries for him. Patrick Surtain, just for everybody who may not have heard me say this before, he was my draft crush going into that year. What I really wanted personally was for the 49ers to draft Patrick Surtain coming out of Alabama. I was a huge Patrick Surtain fan, and I think Patrick Surtain is a better corner than Jason Verrett was. Now, I would be just beyond shocked if the Broncos let him out the door. I don't think they're
Yeah.
ever letting him out the door. I mean, he's a Champ Bailey kind of guy.
Yeah.
That he's going to be a cornerstone of that defense for the next 15 years.
Yeah, but I do agree with Centennial, man. It'd be great. I love Diamador Lenore, but if they could upgrade there, that would be even better. So let me ask you this: on Sunday, I tweeted out something about how we've been for years now. We've been relying on the 49ers defense to carry the offense. Have we reached a point that doesn't have to happen anymore? This offense, not that they're carrying the defense, but are they good enough that they actually could? I mean, in that Rams game, the 49ers offense did kind of carry the day.
Yeah, it's been one of those things for a little while that sometimes the offense was streaky, and a lot of that had to do that Jimmy Garoppolo was streaky.
Yeah.
Sometimes he'd have. I think I was messaging a Raiders content creator this week, because of the struggles there, and I said, look, Jimmy is notorious for starting a season slow. You go back and look at his stats at the beginning of the 2018 season before he tore his ACL, not great. You look at 2019, not great. I think he opened the year throwing 2 picks, bad picks to the against the Buccaneers, and we won because we had more interceptions than the Buccaneers did, because Jameis Winston was just throwing them left and right. And 2000 last year, 2022 did not start out good. 2021 we started out 3-5, right? I said, Jimmy's golden zone is like weeks 8 through 16. That's when Jimmy is usually doing a lot better, and the offense hasn't been as streaky. And it also, you have Christian McCaffrey, who is just, I mean, he is like built for in a lab for this offense. What he brings to this offense is, he's Kyle Shanahan's Ricky Waters.
Yeah.
Mike had Ricky Waters, who was the do everything back and was able to do so much and brought such an explosive element from the running back position as a weapon in the run game and in the pass game. Christian McCaffrey's that. He's Kyle Shanahan's Terrell Davis, a guy who can run this zone scheme so well. And that ties everything together. Now you have the emergence of Brandon Ayuk, that this team is allowed to be a place where they always are able to be their identity on offense. They're not and Brock Purdy's been taking care of the ball, so they are not having to drop back 10 plays in a row. Our offensive line is not built for that. They're not built to be pass blockers. They're guys who are meant to be run blockers, mobile, able to get on the move and use that to set up your play action. And then in the drop back passing game, it's going to be short, quick. It's going to be a timing based. The ball is going to come out quick. You're not going to sit there and have 7-step drop backs and throwing the ball 35 yards down the field on drop back passes. So I think both of them in there have allowed this team to just stick with what they do really well in their identity.
Yeah. So Collie said, I predicted this offseason our offense will finish top 5. Yeah, they're looking like a top 5 offense for sure. Centennial said one can carry the other, making up for any weaknesses. Either side of the ball has that week. The question is, can Brock Purdy put the team on his back and get it done in the biggest moment? Yeah, I think that's a good question. Can Brock Purdy carry the team in those moments where he's going to have to? And what I just think back to is in the Super Bowl when the Chiefs came back and took the lead, and now everybody knows that the 49ers have to throw the ball. All of a sudden, they can't block Chris Jones. And then in the NFC Championship game against the Rams came back, took the lead. All of a sudden, the 49ers can't throw the ball. They can't block Aaron Donald. And so I think that is the big question when they get in a big game against an Eagles front or somebody like that. If they're in a situation where they're going to have to throw the ball, can they do it? I think that is the big question.
It absolutely is the big question, and even going back to what you said against the Rams, we also sometimes forget too that there was Von Miller going against Tom Compton and then Trent Williams on one leg. Remember Trent
Yeah,
Williams was
right.
had that horrible ankle sprain, and so you got Aaron Donald in the middle working against your interior guys, and you got Von Miller going wild on either tackle, and they had Leonard Floyd, and he's going against your tackles. Your tackles are not anywhere close to what you had say week 14.
Yeah.
That's a huge problem. I think the difference is, and people, I think that's a question about Brock Purdy right now. Can he get it done if he has to put the team on his back? And I always look at it that Brock Purdy's not going to be, if what is our standard for him putting the team on his back? Is it Mahomes, where we see him going forward and flick a ball 40 yards down the field that it looks like it's literally comes out of a jugs machine like that's inhuman kind of stuff.
Right.
Are we going to see that? No. Do we need that from Brock Purdy to win a Super Bowl? No. I think if he does it, it's going to be in a different way. And if you go back to last year's Super Bowl, Mahomes only threw for like 140 yards. And so it doesn't, you're not looking that your quarterback has to throw for 800 yards against the Eagles or against the Chiefs to win in those situations. If Brock Purdy's getting it done, it's going to be more along the lines of a Montana or a Tom Brady, where him putting it on his back doesn't look like he's putting it on his back.
Yeah.
It's his ability to deliver the ball to the guys who can make the plays, to make the right throws at the right time, to not get rattled in the pressure moments. So I don't know if Brock Purdy, the way he plays quarterback, if he will ever actually get credit for putting the team on his back. Unless, we're sitting here and the 49ers are 9-time Super Bowl champions. Maybe then, because it took Tom to his 4th, 5th Super Bowl to people
Right.
started to say, okay, maybe there is something to this Tom guy. Because he did not get credit for putting the team on his back for multiple Super Bowls.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be the same thing with Brock Purdy if there's success there because of the way he plays quarterback and the way that he functions in this offense. And the one thing about Brock Purdy, and why I say I see it more akin to that Montana Brady type, is if he's putting the team on his back in those big moment situations, then you're not going to need 2-3 drives in a game back to back where he's got to throw the ball every time because he's not giving you that back-breaking turnover. He's not sitting there where you're down, and unless you're, I guess, Tom Brady against the Falcons in the Super Bowl, where you're down multiple scores and you have to abandon the run game, and all of a sudden the offense is no longer able to stay balanced. I think the one thing that Brock Purdy does really well, he takes care of the ball, he's efficient with where it goes, he allows the offense to stay in its identity. And in that way, I don't know if we're ever actually going to see Brock Purdy have to put the team on his back if we win. Because if he's doing that, then it's going to be a situation where all throughout the game, we're still in the game.
You mentioned the offensive line a little bit. When you've watched film, I'm thinking mainly Spencer Burford and Colton McKivitz. How have they looked? Because they were the concern coming in, especially McKivitz. Although I feel like he's been better than Burford at times. But what have you seen from those two?
McKivitz has been, if you look at it, I don't see any glaring drop-off from Mike McGlinchey. And he's also coming in at like $14 million a year cheaper. So, that's not a problem. Now, he did struggle against T.J. Watt. Now, I think a lot of guys will struggle against T.J. Watt. Yeah, a lot of guys struggle in those situations. Also, that's the first game of the year, and some of that that strip sack that T.J. Watt had. That's really on Brock Purdy. He didn't get the ball. He's holding the ball a little long. Brock Purdy's only playing his 9th, 10th game. That's going to happen. So, what we're not seeing is him getting dumped horizontally like Mike McGlinchey would. Mike McGlinchey always struggled to bend. Okay, he just didn't get low enough, and we're not seeing that from McKivitz. McKivitz might be a little bit slower in his kick step, but I'm not seeing anything there that says this guy's going to be a massive liability. With Spencer Burford, I think he's come a long ways in the run game. Now, I think PFF scores have been a little rough on him, especially I think it was week 2. He was given like a 0.0 pass grade. I don't know how they give that kind of a grade. He was not that bad,
Right.
and so has he been lights out? He did have a poor game against the Rams, but that being said, I think Spencer Burford will be fine going forward.
Good. Well, let's turn our attention to the game that's coming up on Sunday against the Arizona Cardinals. Because if you would have asked me a week ago what I think about this game, I'm thinking it's going to be probably boring if you're not a 49ers fan because it's not going to be close. But after what they did to Dallas, now Dallas wasn't good. They committed 13 penalties for over 100 yards. The Dak Prescott threw an interception. They did not play well. Um, but how much of that was the Cardinals? I mean, is this a team that actually could cause some problems for the 49ers?
I think they're a team that can cause some problems. Are they a team that scares me? No. I just got done today watching the film on the Cardinals, and what you see is one, the Cowboys really struggled handling quarterback option runs. So much like what we were seeing with our offense with Trey Lance, or you were seeing in Philadelphia with Jalen Hurts, that the quarterback run as an option is baked into almost every run they have. And Dallas really struggled with that, and Arizona was able to get numbers in the run game. Now, when it came to if they didn't get numbers in the run game, Dallas's front, it was usually a 0 1 yard run. Most of the times that I was seeing was defensive lapses from Dallas. There was mistakes. They would have two guys accounting for the quarterback, and there would be a 5-on-4 or 6-on-5 blocking for the offense. I think the 49ers are going to come in much more prepared on that. And I don't know if Dallas was just looking past them, if they didn't, their guys weren't on their P's and Q's about that, what was going on there. Another thing was, like you said, the penalties really extended a lot of drives for Arizona. And what that meant was that Arizona kept getting opportunities. We've seen with our team, sometimes you're going to have, when you were committed to running the ball, you're going to have a lot of 1, 2, 3 yard runs. It's when you keep getting chances at it, you might break that 40-yarder off. And that's what you saw versus Dallas, was that there would be either a penalty or somebody would play out of their gap, or the Cardinals really went after, it was Diggs' backup, number 26. I can't remember his name, but I remember because I see numbers on film. Number 26, they were going after him in man coverage. And he gave up a number of first downs. They would isolate him, have a 10-yard out route, and he'd lose. I think they hit that like 3 times to extend drives. When you're doing that kind of stuff, it's hard to then keep the other team from being able to run the ball.
One thing that I saw is that the Cardinals are really bad at tackling, which is important when you're playing football. I think they're one of the worst teams at actually making tackles. Like they've given up, I think it was almost 300 yards after first contact, and now they have to play the Yak Kings. You think that's something that the 49ers are going to try to exploit?
Oh, absolutely. One thing that the 49ers are amazing at is that they have space beaters. So if they put a guy in space, they are really tough to bring down. And the way Jonathan Gannon plays a lot of his defense, he's a Vic Fangio disciple. So it's very Fangio-like in his defense, and so that means you're going to have a lot of shell looks, and you're going to have space underneath. It relies a lot on guys being able to tackle in that 2 to 5 yard range. That is what that defense is really based upon. When you go back and look at Philadelphia, everything was about, we're going to keep that and allow guys to attack downhill, have a monster defensive line to control the line of scrimmage, and we're going to go attack your short passing game and tackle. And I think that's one thing that the 49ers were looking to exploit in that NFC Championship game. If we remember back to when Vic Fangio was with the 49ers in 2011 through 14, we had that. We had great tackling safeties, Dante Whitner and Goldson, and we had amazing tackling linebackers, Patrick Willis, Navarro Bowman. Okay, so you had these guys who were really good at tackling in those situations, and Jonathan Gannon is building a defense very similar to that, is what he wants, but they don't have the talent on that side of the ball yet. And so I think this is going to be a situation where you're going to see a lot of stuff in between the numbers and the hashes. You're going to see a lot of passes in that zone to have space. That's where that defense is kind of vulnerable a little bit, so look for those. Look for Debo in there, CMC in there, Kittle in there, and then when they go man coverage, they're going to try and go to Ayuk.
When the Cardinals are on offense, they like to run the ball, and they've been pretty good at it so far. They ran the ball 30 times for 222 yards against the Cowboys. I don't see them doing something like that against the 49ers, But I'm wondering, do you think that because Steve Wilks has employed this 6-man defensive or this 5-man defensive line, do you think that he's going to do something like that on Sunday, maybe more than he has so far?
Absolutely. I think that's one way that you are able to beat this multitude of running concepts. I was kind of talking with somebody on the web zone the other day about it. That it was actually, I think, yesterday, about how that five defensive linemen front, some of the ways it will come up and press the tight end, it really almost reminds you of the old Bears 46 defense. They were covering 5 and 6 guys on the line, and the 46 defense was named after the safety. His number was 46, and he was kind of this hybrid player. That's where that came from. But it was all about cover up every single lineman, every single blocking person along the line with one-on-ones. And that's one thing that you have to do in this, that you have to cover up every single guy on there so that you don't allow double teams into a weak spot. And so in a lot of ways, the same philosophy I see with our 5-man defensive line, I think will come into play. You're going to put Javon Hargrave right over that center. And so much of this is now, okay, now you're going to be asking that guard to come across and scoop block Javon Hargrave. That's a tough assignment. Or you're going to then be asking that center to be able to engage and defeat Javon Hargrave. That is a really tough ask for any center in this league. Even for a Jason Kelsey, who I think is the best center in the league. So I think that's what you're going to see. I think you're going to see a lot of him, Javon Hargrave, right over that center and control that, and then let your defensive ends help account for the quarterback, or you're going to bring Isaiah Oliver in and help him account for the quarterback, because Dobbs will run it, and he's physical when he runs it. So I think they're going to say, it's going to be either Dre Greenlaw or Isaiah Oliver is going to go hit you in the mouth, and we'll see how many times you're going to try and keep that.
How do you see this game coming out?
I think the Cardinals are, unless they get really lucky and Dobbs, is in some drop back, is able to make some guys miss and get some explosive plays with his legs running down the field. I think this is going to be a game that's going to be really hard for the Cardinals to score. I really do, and I don't see their defense really being able to slow down San Francisco's quick passing game and the Yak brothers and the Yak guys. I see it probably 31-6. I really don't see this as a close game.
Johnny, this has been great, man. You really are doing some great work, and I appreciate you taking the time. Tell everybody where they can find your show and where they can find you on Twitter. You're on Twitter at
Jonnydels, yeah, and it's just like you see it on the screen. For those listening, that's Jonnydel with no H. I'm not a John with an H. I'm a Jonathan, so I go by Jonnydel. And then on YouTube at Johnnydel's Football Academy, you can just Google Jonnydel, and it's going to show up YouTube for Johnnydel's Football Academy.
Yeah, definitely go check out his stuff, because I've been watching and love the fact that I can bring that up and learn some things. That it really helps me with what I do. And thank you for joining us. It's been a lot of fun. Wherever you're listening or watching, make sure that you subscribe to both of our channels so that you can help us reach more fans. But Johnny, thanks again for joining us, and hope that everything goes well for you and keeps on growing.
Hey, I sure appreciate it. And thank you for having me on. I always am so grateful for anybody who's gracious enough to let me speak to their audience. I know that you're going to be a good gatekeeper over your audience, and so it's very humbling and honoring to be able to be asked on your show. So thank you.
Yeah, it's been our